Alright guys, Pat here. Welcome to Box Office Addict. This is my live stream podcast that I do every Sunday where I talk about the weekend box office numbers and I tell you about the marketing cost, who distributed the film, who actually put the money up to make the film, because there's a difference between investors of a movie and the people that actually release the movie, and the profits are different with that. A lot of people don't know that. And we also go into what the expectations were to what the actual final numbers are and why that happened. Could it be marketing? Could it be release date? There's all sorts of factors to why a movie performs the way it does. And if you follow the money, as they always say, you can see a pattern. You can see why they make the kind of movies they do and what kind of movies they're going to make in the future. Ever since I was 12 or 13, I kind of got addicted to looking at the box office. I used to check it in the newspaper, and then I started looking it up on the internet and over again. Then looking at old movies' box office performance and trying to break them down. It became kind of an addiction, an odd addiction, because you can have an addiction to all sorts of things. But one thing I found that I was obsessed with, I was thinking about opening weekends in my head at night in bed when I was like, what's Transformers opening weekend going to be? I used to think about that. I used to do the math in my head of what a domestic performance was. I used to write out, I mean, it was almost like being an accountant. I would list all the pros and cons, and I would break it down and percentages and all that. But other people listen to the show, or view the show, I guess. I consider them box office addicts too, because there's a lot of weekend box office videos that are like 20 minutes and you talk about the top 5 and you go into your theories, and you basically cover the news. You cover like, hey, this movie opened #1, it's a good or bad performance. Yay! What does this mean next, you know? But here we try to have more of a free-form discussion with the chat being involved and everyone, and myself. And we just like to talk about movies here. You know, it's not just the money, it's not just the numbers, which is what we stick to, but it's really just a place to start so we can open up the conversation and hear different opinions, and we can all come to some kind of a consensus together about these things. And I always find that really interesting. So, hey guys, I'm hoping the audio's good. I might have to leave midstream if this goes on for too long. Okay, Bathory. I hope that doesn't happen. I hope you stay a little longer. You're one of my favorite people. It's evening here, but thank you. Yeah, I was going to do this episode earlier. I wanted to do it at like 3 or 4. But I just got caught up. I had to eat some food, and I got caught up talking to some people, online and offline. I was talking to people offline while I was talking to people online. And I just didn't have the time. What's your opinion on Comicsgate and the firing of Axel Alonso? I don't know much about the firing of Axel. I know about Comicsgate. I mean, I don't know what you want from me. I pretty much have the same opinion on those things as like Captain Cummings or any of that. I'm not as deep in comic books as I used to be. When I was a teenager and in my early 20s, I read a lot of comic books, but because of a quality drop that I found in a lot of the stuff I was reading, I just don't read books as much, and I don't follow it a lot. I don't follow a lot of those people on Twitter, like Dan Slott and all that. I don't really care. I get why other people care and they want quality comic books, and I want better comic books to be written too and done. Don't get me wrong. I'm not knocking people who that, but it's just not my interest. I'm more interested in movies and television stuff and where that's going, because I think comic books are always going to be what they are. You know, if an independent comic book artist wants to do a comic book that's great, it's going to be great, and I'm going to like it. Random question for fun. Is box office a new drug? I think money and numbers was always kind of a drug, because you can vicariously live through the success or failures of others. Like if you hate some filmmaker or some studio or some movie and it bombs, it can make you happy, or if something you like does well, it can make you happy, or it makes you unhappy. But I think you can you at least kind of can live the experience of what it's like, you know, to get that phone call on Sunday and be like, hey, your movie opened #1. It's kind of exciting to, I think it became a fun thing even back in the 80s. Scorsese talks about this when it started to be in the paper a lot more and people started talking about it on television a lot more. Even critical analysis now, you know, it used to be you didn't know how critics all felt about a movie. You didn't know if every critic liked it. Now you have sites like Rotten Tomatoes where you can see a consensus and you can see all the reviews collected. So it's just a different time Really, I think that's all it is that people have more access to information and more access to the box office. I think if they would have had access to that stuff, people would have always been looking at it, just like people obsess over all sorts of things. But there wasn't really a way before the internet, outside of going to buy, film magazines and newspapers to really get all the numbers and the production costs and all that. And that was fun. And I only got a little bit of that era when I was a kid. I got a hint of that era. But today's world, you Google that information and you find you find a plethora of stuff to look through. So do you think Justice League had been better filmed, the box office still would have been the same? We'll get into that. I'm very excited to talk about Justice League. This might be my most excited thing about Box Office Addict so far. Because when I first started this, I think I talked about Dunkirk when I first started the show. And that was exciting to talk about because it was crazy how well that movie opened. And you got to talk about the whole career of Christopher Nolan and war films and how that film did and the reviews and all that. But every week I've been doing this, there's only been maybe 3 films that I was actually interested into going into things so much about it. It's strange now it seems much easier to get the critic consensus, and yet fewer people trust reviews. There's probably just so many reviews now. Think back in the day, if you watched Siskel and Ebert, that's who you used to watch to get a lot of your film criticism. There was a few other guys, but it was mainly them. So if they liked or disliked a movie, that was pretty much what you got, or your local newspaper. You couldn't read every article, every review from every paper. You'd have to go buy a film book by someone like Pauline Kael. But now there's Rotten Tomatoes will collect 300-something reviews. So I don't know if it's people aren't listening to reviewers. There's just so many reviewers now that, there's not the balance that there used to be. It used to be reviewers were kind of thought of as these figures who had strong opinions, and you listened to, like, Ebert was highly respected, and Siskel and Pauline Kael and all these great, even Rex Reed had pull for a long time. Now he's kind of a has-been, but writers used to just be more popular in general, like journalists, people who wrote columns, reviewers, and all that stuff's less, just in general, that stuff's less popular than it was. But once again, that probably has to do with the internet. There's more people talking about this stuff now than there used to be. There's a lot more people. But yeah, I can't wait. Most of the movies I've talked about, I didn't have too much interest in talking about. I like Kingsman was fun and Blade Runner. But Justice League is the most fascinating one. I've been waiting months for this because nobody knew how this was going to do. And I'll be the first one to say right now, I was wrong about this movie. For months, people kept telling me, hey, that movie's going to open really bad. And it's going to open in a really, really disappointing way. And I kept saying, no, there's a boost from Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman did so well, and she's in this movie, that a lot of people that are Wonder Woman fans, she's the Iron Man now, will help this movie. And I said it'll at least open to like 140, 150 million. And other people are telling me, no, that film's going to underperform. It's not going to do as well as Suicide Squad. And I was reading that a lot, and I was telling people, dude, you're wrong. You're crazy. It's got Batman and then Superman. And even if you hate Batman v Superman, the opening weekend was 166 million. The opening weekend of Man of Steel was 120 million. So I thought, at least this movie, at a minimum, it's going to open to 120, 130 million, which isn't great. And, I kept fighting it, the bad marketing. I thought this movie had terrible marketing. The only trailer that I thought was good was the first teaser where Batman says, I'm real when it's necessary, or when it's needed, I think, which is a cool line they shouldn't have cut. But every trailer after that was just kind of the same thing. It was a series of jokes. They hardly showed Steppenwolf. They didn't really give you a sense of the villain. There was no hook. It's just, hey, remember the Avengers? Which that marketing worked then because Marvel had spent years developing that, and it was the first big superhero team-up movie. The problem with this movie is it's a decade later, and they're like, hey, look, superheroes are getting teamed up. And that's all the trailers did, was like, hey, look, it's Batman with Wonder Woman. And whoever ran the marketing did a horrible job. In comparison to the marketing of Man of Steel and Batman v Superman and the marketing on Suicide Squad, all of those movies had much better marketing campaigns. Those trailers popped. They clicked with audiences. This movie got less hype as the year went on. Like earlier in the year, I felt like Justice League had a lot of hype. And the first, that first trailer had 30 million hits on YouTube. They were getting the clicks. And then the last few trailers, especially that last one and the other things, they just were the same images. It was the final fight over and over again. It's like, hey, here's Aquaman fighting with Batman on the Batmobile going, yeah! And I don't think that brought people in. I think coming out a few weeks after Thor hurt this movie a lot. That was a very bad idea for both. Not really for Thor, because it got to go first. But you have to think about it this way. Wonder Woman opened to $103 million. Spider-Man Homecoming opened to $117 million. And Thor Ragnarok opened to $122 million. So now you have a film that features some of the most famous superheroes of all time, and the movie can't even crack $100 million. Let's give you further context. Iron Man 1 in 2008, the first Marvel film, made $98 million opening weekend in 2008. So about a decade ago, a film just with Iron Man made more money on its opening weekend than a film with The Flash, Superman, Batman, Aquaman, Wonder Woman, Cyborg. That's ridiculous. That's pathetic. There's no way to spin it as a positive. The only positive here is the international box office. But I've seen so many videos I've seen so many people on comment sections or on other box office videos trying to give an excuse for Justice League's performance. Like, well, hey, there's all these factors and you have to consider that, and it's going to have a high multiplier going into the holidays. And I'm like, guys, there's no way to spin this in a positive way. It's not a bomb. The movie's going to make some profit, most likely, because they're going to make a lot of money, and they're going to be selling merchandise, and they're going to have DVD and television sales. So I'm not saying this film's a flop, but it's expectations. It had a better opening weekend. Pennywise and It had a better opening weekend than Justice League. That's pathetic. That's pathetic. And I know It was a surprise hit, but there's all these movies that did so much better this year than this. So it's not superhero fatigue. It's not that people just hate DC movies, because Wonder Woman was the most successful film domestically this year. Okay, so, and it got good reviews. I don't think it's just the reviews here. I don't think it's just I don't think it's just that people are tired of Zack Snyder and they didn't like Man of Steel and Batman v Superman, so it didn't carry over to this film. I don't think it's all that. I think it's a bigger problem where they didn't even get the color right. Like, they didn't even get, like, the trailers. It should be so exciting to see the Flash run, or it should be so exciting to see Superman fly in the trailers, or see Batman, and it's not. The movie lacks a visceral impact that a lot of other movies have. Thor Ragnarok had this beautiful trailer with Immigrant Song, and it got a bunch of clicks. The It trailer had these scary visuals and camera work and the creepy stuff with Pennywise and creepy editing. The Justice League trailers, you could see it was a bland movie. And I don't know how the marketing team didn't work to avoid that in the same way the Suicide Squad marketing team did that. So you have to blame the marketing team, but I think in general it's just that they made Batman and all these characters that are great and cool, they made them come off not cool. They're not cool to young people. They're not appealing. Think how Iron Man used to be a B-tier character, and now he's the most popular superhero out there. Superman, if this movie does have elements that are likable about Superman, it's actually the first film in a long time to get Superman right. But because they did such a bad job of getting audiences on board with this new Superman and Henry Cavill and Ben Affleck's Batman and all that, it didn't carry over to this movie at all. It didn't carry over even slightly. It's and you could just solely blame Zack Snyder for that, but it's not just his fault. It's a lot of people's fault. It's a marketing mistake. It's the fault of Warner Brothers for spending so much money on this movie and even doing the reshoots with Joss Whedon. Maybe they shouldn't have done the reshoots. That just cost them money because the opening weekend sucks. Those reshoots didn't do anything for this movie. Making it a shorter movie at 2 hours and adding that Joss Whedon stuff didn't help the opening weekend at all. So I'm thinking maybe you should just release the original movie or maybe cut it down to like 2.5 hours. But I'm thinking maybe you guys should have just went with Snyder and went that way. I don't know. Yeah, Cyborg looked terrible, but I did like Cyborg in the movie, but he didn't look good in the actual movie. The CGI of Cyborg and the design of Cyborg. When you go look at the concept art for the movie, it all looks so much better. Like, the Flash looks better, Cyborg looks pretty cool. And then you see the movie, and it's like, God, these costumes are ridiculous. Okay, I'm going to try to look through some of your questions real quick, though, if you guys have any. And they get less from international marketing than the domestic. Yeah, they're going to get less money. They're going to make less profit. Like, it had a $51 million opening in China. And I think most movies only keep 25% of the revenue from China ticket sales. So Sure, they're going to make a lot of money in China, but they're not going to get the majority of the ticket sales. Where in the States, they're probably going to get 60% on opening weekend, 65. So a lot of their money is going to rely on their international performance. And there's a lot of people saying the domestic finish of this movie might be under 200 million. We're talking about good analysts here who really know this stuff. They're saying that this film, even with the holidays coming up, because there's competition, Coco's coming out next weekend, has a lot of hype, and then you have Star Wars at the end of next month, but even if this does, I don't see this having a triple multiplier. I don't see this film making $300 million domestically. I don't. If it does, that would shock me. Because Thor Ragnarok looks like it's barely going to make that, if not make it. And I don't see how Justice League with a $96 million opening weekend is going to hold well enough to make... Doesn't mean it won't make $250 million domestic, but it's going to have an abysmal domestic showing for its budget. That's just the budget. The budget's $300 million. That's not including the marketing. Oh my god. They probably have $450 to $500 million in this film, and it's not going to make $300 million domestically, and it features all these heroes. While Wonder Woman made $412 domestically. When you put that all in context, you just see how bad this opening weekend actually is. Okay, I'm sorry. The hook was Aquaman saying, "I dig it," and this Come Together song. Yeah, that was their hook in the trailer, I know. I know. The cockering. And yes, I like his CK video. Whose CK video? My CK video? Louis CK. I mean, at least he asked them, at least in the... Yeah, I like that Louis CK video. By the way, I really enjoyed your take on that comedian. Oh, okay. Yeah, I like that video too. I didn't write that video, but I kind of had points I wanted to make, and I thought I had it focused, but it ended up being more like therapeutic for me to kind of get over what was going on and figure it out in my own way. And that thing kind of came organically, that like when truth hurts. And I just pictured Louis being in disguise in my head. It's like he'd be in disguise right now. Like the last person Louis C.K. wants to be right now is Louis C.K. And that was kind of the idea of the video going in. And but I was happy with that video. I appreciate you watching it. Screen Rant says 600 million global gross is the break-even point. Well, then they'll break even. If that's the break-even point, they'll break even because it's definitely going to make 600 million worldwide. But still, you know, they had to have assumed, just like Batman v Superman, you know that they wanted that film. They thought Man of Steel was going to make $1 billion. This has been documented that the studio, Warner Brothers, thought Man of Steel was going to, and it should have. It had the hype. It had the opening weekend. If Man of Steel had been a great movie, that film would have made 400 mil domestic and 600 mil at the international box office. Instead, it makes under 700 mil. Batman v Superman, they bring Batman in out of desperation. Superman's not appealing anymore. They go, okay, let's Batman v Superman, huge opening weekend. Then that film makes $870 million. Doesn't really come close to the numbers they were expecting, which the rumors were at least $1 billion at a minimum, or 1.5 like the Avengers. Then you have this film, which is their Avengers, and everyone at the time was going, well, hey, Batman v Superman's the big opening weekend. Imagine what Justice League's going to do. If Batman v Superman opened to 166, Justice League should open at 200 million. Now you have a film that went down to 96 million. That's a huge decline. That's a huge decline. There's DC from this point on, I think, should stop doing team-up movies. It should just be Wonder Woman has her film series, Aquaman has his film series, Batman, Superman. They need to stop the crossovers. It's going to cost them too much money. And the solo films end up being more profitable outside of Suicide Squad, which was very successful. But that hit a different audience. That kind of hit this gothy, emo, hot topic audience who wanted to have sex with Jared Leto and Margot Robbie. There was a lack of sex appeal in the trailers for Justice League because maybe there was too much green screen. There was a lack of humanity. Even the humor didn't really hit that well in the trailers, I don't think. I mean, I saw those trailers in the theater a lot, and people in the theater never seemed excited to go see the movie. But maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. This is going to be discussed from years from now, this opening weekend, because it's one of the worst opening weekends ever for a film like this. Like, for a film that's this expensive, they put this much time into it. The fact that I think a lot of things too, maybe the production issues got out too much in the press. Everybody was writing about how Zack Snyder's cut was a mess, and everybody was writing about the reshoots. Maybe that hurt the hype. There wasn't a lot of positive news coming out about this movie. All of the news was negative for the last year. I mean, all you kept reading about was how messy this film was going to be. So that's also really hurt the movie, I think. Because you weren't hearing, like, man, there's good stuff happening on the set. All the articles, everything that was reported was negative all the time. And he kept hearing that Ben Affleck was going to leave. Now it's pretty much confirmed he was going to leave. And a lot of people were trying to spin it in a positive way, I think, and I give them credit for attempting it, but it just didn't work. The DCEU doesn't perform like MCU. That's what we've learned. The team-up movies will do about as well as the solo outings. That's a different beast. Yeah, and you think how well Wonder Woman did. Wonder Woman did so well as a solo movie. It kind of... yeah, it doesn't look like a $300 million movie. I agree. It looks like a film that's like cost $150 million at most. It looked like everything was shot in a soundstage. I mean, like, Red Letter Media had it right, and I felt the same way. It looked like a 90s movie. It really did. It looked like a 90s movie totally. I mean, it looked like a film from like 1996, 1997. The special effects looked at that quality like a late 90s, early 2000s film. The pacing and the tone of the movie. I mean, it reminded me of stuff like Deep Impact and all that. It took me back to the late 90s. That was kind of what was fun about it. It was like going back to a different time when you could make a big stupid movie like that, a big dumb, adaptation of the Super Friends. Kind of like, when Tim Burton's Batman came out, to most of the general public, Batman was still Adam West and not the comics. This felt like a movie that was made if most people still thought of the Super Friends, and we didn't live in a post-Marvel world, that people still thought of those characters in that cartoon. And they didn't know about the new shows. The new shows hadn't really taken over yet. Batman the Animated Series was popular, but we hadn't had Superman fully yet, and the Justice League and Unlimited and all that. Because those shows are all great. It's just weird. This felt like a movie that was made it was made for an audience from a different time. It did not feel like a movie that was made for a 2017 audience, and that's what took me back the most. I was like, which would be cool if the movie felt timeless. But it feels like a 90s movie. It doesn't feel timeless. It feels like it's straight from the 90s. So it's so funny. And you got to know, Ben Affleck looked miserable. It reminded me of Daniel Craig in Spectre, where he seemed really bored and like he didn't want to be there, and it kind of affected the movie's tone and all that. Ben Affleck as Batman and Batman v Superman, I thought, was engaged and was trying despite the material. And he was working with Chris Terrio to make a decent Batman. He was attempting to. This film, man, it's like Affleck's just phoning it in scene after scene. I mean, I was so disappointed in that, because I thought, oh, Affleck's going to be good. And he's like one of the weaker parts of this movie. It's, Jason Momoa actually has a lot of charisma. The guy who plays Cyborg has a lot of charisma. Ben Affleck, this was like bad Ben Affleck. This went back to Paycheck and Reindeer Games and all that stuff, where he's just, oh my god, you're not right for this. He looked bloated too. Does anyone notice that Ben Affleck's face looked really fat? They didn't look good. He looked pretty good in Batman v Superman. I liked how he looked. Here he looked like he just got off a bender. I mean, he looked old. He looked like he had face work done or something. I didn't like how he looked in this movie. It kind of put me off. Thank you that you liked my Justice League video. I appreciate that. I appreciate you watching it. Almost every movie and show has to have a woman as leader. That doesn't bother me. If you want to have female characters. Worst director, Snyder or Bay? Bay. And although that movie he made, the one with The Rock and Mark Wahlberg about the weightlifting guys who God, what's that called? Iron or something? Pumping Iron. That movie, Pain and Gain. That was actually a pretty fun movie. And I think Michael Bay's early stuff like The Rock and Bad Boys is decent. But, yeah, Zack's never made anything as bad as Transformers 2, 3, 4, in my opinion, or 5. Now, don't get me wrong, I think Batman v Superman's on that level. But I still think it's a better movie than what Michael Bay's been doing for the last decade, for the most part. Michael Bay's probably more interesting just because he's been around so long and he's made some really crazy stuff like Pearl Harbor, where you're just like, whoa. But I don't know. Zack at least is trying to make a better movie. Like, he just doesn't seem to have the ability all the time or the resources to pull it off. But Michael Bay doesn't seem to care. He legit just talks like he doesn't care. He knows if he just shoots the stuff and releases it. And he lies all the time. Michael Bay's always like, this is my last Transformers film. Then he made another one. Then he made another one. And Zack, you can't blame the guy for wanting to do Superman and Batman movies and all that. He's a comic book nerd and he wanted to make the movies. He at least seems passionate about the stuff he's doing. I'm just not a fan of it, where Michael Bay didn't seem to give a damn about Transformers on any level. and that he just seemed to see the chance to make a lot of money off the special effect. So for me, it's Michael Bay, but that isn't a defense of Zack Snyder. Man, yeah, like hiding his mustache. What were they thinking with that? Think about the money that was spent for the mustache, and it looks terrible. That special effect looks awful. They spent a few $1,000,000, and they couldn't make a very basic effect look good. I mean, it makes no... I mean, I said this when I made my mustache video months ago. Like, why didn't they just have Henry Cavill shave the mustache and wear a fake mustache for Mission Impossible 6? It just... I still believe it's a troll. I still think it was Tom Cruise and the director and everyone over there just being douches. Like, let's screw with their movie. Because it really makes no sense. It would be so easy for a makeup... You see good beards and hair and wigs and all that and makeup all the time in movies. All the time. All the time when you watch a movie, someone's wearing a wig. Or they have on a fake beard. And then you see that, and you're like, why is Henry Cavill's mustache so important to your movie? And because of that, we got this terrible-looking Superman where his mouth doesn't look right. And it sucks because Henry Cavill's smiling, and it's the first time he smiled, and he looks happy, and he seems to be having a good time, and he's ruined because his face looks like a weird special effect. I can't believe that. It blows my mind they couldn't do that right. That seems like such an easy thing, doesn't it, in 2017? Like, oh yeah, just remove the mustache digitally and put his mouth there. And it's like they couldn't do it. It's like, who did the special effects on this movie? You couldn't go to ILM and Weta and get that done? Like, we live in the era of, like, the Planet of the Apes movies right now, the Andy Serkis films and all that stuff. You know, we have advanced special effects now. We're not stuck in, like... That's another reason the movie felt like it was from the 90s. The special effects look dated. Not all of them. But, like, the green goo always looked so fake. It took me back to a different time. Any chance you can start again? No, sorry, man. I wish I could. Just start over. Don't worry. You could just listen to it again, buddy. I think you and Cesar Romero Joker $10 to hide his mustache. Cesar Romero. I enjoyed reindeer games. I also enjoy reindeer games, but probably in an ironic way. I don't enjoy it as, like, a movie, but, like, it's fun to watch. It is very fun. And that's the thing, too. Base films actually bring in the returns more. Like, Zack Snyder, outside of 300, which was his one really big hit. 300 was a huge hit. Everything he made after that's disappointed at the box office. Sucker Punch was a bomb. Watchmen bombed. Watchmen didn't make its money back. It bombed a lot. It bombed really hard for the studio. They put a lot of money into that film. You go down the road with that. His Owl movie, Guardians of Gahul, did okay. And then Man of Steel and Batman v Superman both disappointed. He hasn't really been he hasn't shown any power at the box office since 300. Like that movie, when that movie made, it seemed like he was hot. That and Dawn of the Dead, he could do no wrong. And Watchmen had a huge opening weekend. But it was like after that, his reputation just got less and less and less. And now, I think it's very clear audiences aren't on board with the whole Zack Snyder DC universe, unfortunately. So is Justice League not making its money back? I think it's going to make its money back. Don't get me wrong. I think it will. I just don't think it's going to make a lot of profit. And the profit they do make isn't going to be as high as it should be. Like, Wonder Woman's probably... No, not probably. Definitely going to make more profit than this movie. Wonder Woman's going to make more profit than Justice League. Thor Ragnarok's going to make more profit. Spider-Man Homecoming's going to make more profit. Logan's probably going to make more profit. This is probably going to be one of the least profitable superhero films from this year. All those other superhero films did so much better than their budgets and kind of overperformed. And all of them got really good reviews. So even by comparison to this year alone, Justice League isn't performing that well. When you compare it to other superhero films from this year, didn't Logan have a better opening weekend? Didn't Logan open... I think Logan... No, Logan opened a little bit less, but Logan cost under $100 million, and I think its opening weekend was like $88 million or $90, and that was earlier in the year. I mean, this only opened a few million more than Logan. That's pretty crazy when you think about it. Hugh Jackman by himself. Justice League War was a better Justice League film. So I missed a classic rant. I didn't rant, did I? I don't think I've ranted. See, no one expects anything actual quality from Michael Bay, but they expect good work from Snyder. I don't know why people expect good work from Snyder right now. But I would say Justice League is going to make its money back, but it's not going to make a lot of profit. And for how much they put into it and what they should have made for the kind of movie it is, it's a disappointment. You know, there's a difference between a movie being a flop where it loses money and a film disappointing. A film sometimes is just a disappointment. This is a disappointment. Even the early tracking was better than this. It was saying 110, 120 million. So this opening, I mean, just an opening under 100 million is not good. That's really like, whoa. Like, that's the part that shocked me the most, because I wasn't expecting it to open huge, but I would have never guessed under 100 million. I wouldn't have ever thought that. Anyone who bet money on that, kudos to you, because just, yeah, I would have never thought, oh yeah, that movie's only going to make 100 million. This movie's going to make 96 million. It's probably going to end up being less than that, like 94 million. It's crazy. Batman v Superman and Justice League look like they take place on one of those fantasy sequences in Sucker Punch. You're not wrong. I didn't say the 166 million for Batman v Superman was disappointing. That was a great opening weekend. It's just the final total was bad. The second weekend was like a 70% drop. It opened to that and dropped 70%, and then the final domestic total was only 330 million. It wasn't a good multiplier, and it didn't even make $1 billion worldwide. Not that it needed to, but it ended up making less profit at the end of the year than a film like Doctor Strange, and it had Batman and Superman in it. WB is spending way too much money on these movies. It cost $225 million to make Man of Steel. That hurt that movie's profits. Batman v Superman cost $250, and this film cost $300. They're just killing their profits. The films that have made the most profits, Suicide Squad and Wonder Woman, had pretty modest budgets. Suicide Squad cost $175 million. That makes sense with the cast they had. And Wonder Woman cost $150 million. That made sense. And both of those films did pretty well. It's like the movies they put all their money into, which has only been the Zack Snyder films. That's very telling. It's the 3 Zack Snyder films. But Batman v Superman had a great opening weekend, great marketing campaign. I wasn't saying it had a bet. That was a great opening weekend. It's just the film didn't perform well after that. The final total was disappointing. The opening weekend wasn't disappointing. The final total domestically and worldwide was disappointing. There's no excuse for a Batman Superman movie to not make $1 billion. There just isn't. That just means the word of mouth was bad. And the weekend drops were horrible for Batman v Superman. And I expect the same thing for Justice League. I don't see this having great holds. I think next week is definitely going to be a 60% drop maybe. And it's going to keep happening. I don't see this having good hold. It's probably going to hold better than Batman v Superman did, sure. But the opening weekend of Batman v Superman was so much better that it doesn't really matter. What do you think is worse, a flop or a disappointment? It depends on what it is. Like, if you have a low-budget movie flop, is that really that big of a deal? You spent, like, maybe $5-10 million on it, and it didn't make its money back, and you lost a few million. But when you have a movie that costs $300 million, and it's supposed to make you hundreds of millions of dollars, and it doesn't, that's probably a worse thing to take a hit on than a film. It depends on the film you're talking about, though. Like, if a big-budget movie that's expensive flops, you lose a lot of money. Like, Blade Runner 2049 is going to lose Alcon, 70-80 million. So that it really just depends on the movie. If a low-budget film bombs, it's not as bad or flops. So, Justice League, it's worse as a disappointment compared to something else, but that doesn't mean that it's the worst thing in the world either. But this is definitely one of the most disappointing opening weekends I can think of, like, ever. Like, this is definitely a top 10, top 20 disappointing opening weekends for a movie. Do you think this will affect Infinity War with Thanos being a completely CGI villain? No. I think that Marvel has such a built-in fan base, and their movies consistently open so well. I don't really see how that's going to affect it that much. I don't think Thanos is very loved by audiences yet, but people love Iron Man and Captain America and Doctor Strange and the Guardians of the... I mean, you can understand, Infinity War is going to have the Guardians of the Galaxy, which is a popular franchise in itself, and then the Marvel Avengers crew, and, they're going to have all that mixed together. So it's kind of different. I don't see how Infinity War won't open to 180 million minimum to 200 million, but... even if that film only makes $1 billion and then the second film makes like 1.2 or 1.3, that's not a bad performance. Certainly they would want it to do better than the first Avengers, but that might have kind of been the peak for Marvel when the first Avengers came out in 2012. I'm not really sure. They haven't been able to top that so far. But I don't think this movie will affect Infinity War that much at all. Just like I don't think this movie affected Thor or Wonder Woman or Spider-Man or any of that stuff. I don't think superhero movies affect each other so much. I think it's more because people always talk about fatigue, but fatigue keeps getting debunked because every year a superhero film makes a lot of money. So there's no fatigue. It's just the different movies themselves. Okay. Infinity War will open to 200 million. I mean, I would think so. I would think 180 to 200 million is where Infinity War is going to open. I don't see it doing much more than that, but it could open. I think the last film in Infinity War Part 2 is going to open really well. You don't know about Part 1. It's kind of like Deathly Hallows Part 1 in that they don't do as well as the second one because a lot of people, they don't all go rush out. No, I haven't. Just been talking. Well, Justice League is the thing to talk about. It's such a big story. I mean, it's like, what else? I mean, I want to talk about the other movies that are out, but man, it's just like, wow. The opening weekend of Justice League is the story of the weekend, and maybe the story of the year is Justice League. Because this is a movie we've been hearing about all year. We've all been following it. We were all wondering what the opening weekend was gonna be. There was debate about it all year, and I don't think anyone was saying under 100 million. I mean, this is crazy. Like, there's really not even words to talk about how crazy this is. That this movie didn't do as well as it should have. I mean, it's something for Warner Brothers to go back and look at. They probably knew this was going to open bad. I'm sure they had a sense of it going back, and that's why they were trying to fix it. But yeah, there's nothing as exciting to talk about this week. I mean, I want to talk about the other movies, and I will, but that's the one where it's like, wow, that's, because what caused this is going to be the biggest question. Because there's multiple factors, but what was the main cause? And I don't think we'll ever really know. I don't think it will. I'm going to say it was marketing mixed with the visual, like the visceral look of the movie didn't appeal to people, are my two theories. That people didn't like the look of the movie, and they didn't just like the trailers overall. They didn't like the tone and the jokes and all that. That's my best guess, because I don't think it's carried over from people hating Zack Snyder. I don't think, because if that was true, people wouldn't have went and saw Wonder Woman, because audiences don't know who's directing what. For all they knew, that was a Zack Snyder movie. His name was on that movie. He was a producer. So I'm not sure. I think it has more to do with, yeah, the marketing just sucked. The trailers made the movie look bland, and the movie itself is bland. And marketing's job is to try to make you see the best movie possible, really. Or at least to get audiences to go see the movie, good or bad. And maybe there just wasn't enough material for them to do that with. I don't think there was enough meat for them to cut around and go, hey, let's make a really awesome trailer. Plus, they kept reshooting the movie, and that probably affected the marketing. A lot of stuff that's in the trailers isn't in the movie. I mean, that's the weird part. There's a lot of stuff that's not in there. I'm checking a little late. What are some factors that play into a movie making good on its returns? Making good on its returns. Well, if everyone makes their money, when you have the distributor, which isn't always the same as the people who produce and make the movie. Like, one company can spend $100 million to make a movie, and another company releases the movie, and their profits are different. And so it's basically a point when a movie, they call it breaks even, is the term. So basically when a movie breaks even, and everyone gets their money. Everyone who worked on the movie got their money. Everyone who's supposed to get their money, the producers, the people who put the money to make the movie, the people who release the movie. When everyone makes their money back is when a movie is doing good. And then when a movie makes more than that, when it makes its money back, that's a good thing. They want to break even. But then when it makes more than that, that's when a studio itself or a company, whoever worked on that movie, their stock goes up. Your stock goes up, and it goes up during the quarter and stuff too like that. So at the end of the year, you want your stock to be up high, and you want your studio to look like it's making a lot of money and a lot of profit, because that helps your studio and the company in general and all the people working there. So somewhere like Disney, a lot of their movies don't just do well, they make a lot of profit. So it makes the whole company, the whole production company of Disney look better. And it helps their stock at the end of the year, and it helps the overall company of Disney. The movies help everything with Disney. It helps the theme park. It helps the cartoons. It helps ABC. It helps everything. Marvel and Star Wars benefit Disney in all ways. And that's kind of the main factor, is a movie making enough money that it makes the studio itself have be more established and have more power and pedigree and you know, because then you can start a streaming service and show all of those movies you produced and made, and then people go to that streaming service, you know, and you can make money off that movie 20 years later, and then you make money off the merchandise, and then you can do TV show spin-offs off that movie. Like Disney always does. Disney does this a lot. They'll do a live-action remake of an animated film they made back in the 90s, and then that makes money. And then they'll do a TV show spin-off of some successful movie, like Toy Story gets a Buzz Lightyear cartoon, and that makes money for them. So that's basically when a movie is, when it really affects people, when it hits the pulp culture, when it's in the vernacular, when people are discussing it and it's making money in that kind of way, or everyone's going, "Hey man, did you go see Deadpool? Did you go see Inception?" And it keeps making, you know, and it makes money down the road, and it's a movie that's going to play well on television, and it creates sequels and all that. That's really all they want. They want branding today. They want the IP to be successful, and then it helps the brand of the studio overall. It's like, yeah, you know, we all know Disney is successful. We all know it now, and it makes them seem like they're so far above everyone else. And that's just success of films, one after another. And that's all because they nurtured their brands. It's like Nintendo. Nintendo has that great first-party content that still does well. Mario still does well. Zelda still does well. Pokemon dominates. Pokemon hasn't died off at all in 20 years. Every new Pokemon game still sells well. All the Pokemon merchandise still sells. The cartoon still does. All over the world, Pokemon still makes billions of dollars. And Nintendo, you know, it's been around over 20 years. Mario still makes money. So Nintendo doesn't need to make a console that's up technologically with an Xbox or a PC especially, or a PlayStation. But their game, their party content, the fans are so loyal to the brand of Smash Brothers and Mario Kart and all that. They don't need to. They can always make money, and they don't even have to drop the prices. They keep the prices up on their first party content because Nintendo, they nurtured the brand. They kept it popular. That's a real success. When you don't necessarily have to make innovations. Not that the Wii wasn't kind of an innovation, but Nintendo's greatest strength is that the popularity of Mario and Zelda and all those things they have, Metroid, didn't die off. There's so much nostalgia and love for those things, where a lot of other companies did kind of lose that. They did kind of lose what their spokesperson, their mascot, if you will, for their game console. Nintendo has a lot of mascots, and they can mix them together, and it does really well for them. And that's real success. That, you know, because then you're making them, you know, like Star Wars. Star Wars, George Lucas handled the brand of that movie brilliantly. He was great at that. In fact, I think he should be more involved with what Disney's doing, because he was a genius at how he released the toys and how he marketed those films, and he waited to release them. He did a great job with the original trilogy and the prequels in that regard. And I think Disney's oversaturating the market with Star Wars to where the brand's losing some of its novelty. When George Lucas knew you couldn't have too much Star Wars at once. You had to have little bursts of it and then take time away from it to get people built up, excited about it again. Which really benefited Force Awakens, that time. But I'm not sure if that's going to play out in the next few years. We'll have to see how Disney handles that. Okay, screw Pokemon. I'm just glad Digimon is getting some love. Digimon, Digital Monsters. Yeah, look how Sonic's been handled for years, right? Sonic was not a well-handled franchise, and a lot of the games weren't good, so Sonic's not as popular. Not that he's dead, but he's not what he used to be. Well, Nintendo's pretty much selling consoles off their first-party material. They're like, do you want to play the new Mario game? You want to play Zelda Breath of the Wild? You got to get a Nintendo Switch. You know, and that works. It definitely works. Branding's everything. It's the word, you know, it's everything. You know, the brand has to mean. It's why people go to McDonald's. You know, they want the Big Mac, even if it's not the best burger. It's cheap and convenient, and they're used to getting it. They're used to going to McDonald's and getting the same quality Big Mac every time they go there. People like consistency. People like comfort. They like to feel like they're safe and comforted. And Marvel has done a terrific job at giving people that comfort. The reason that all the Marvel movies kind of have the same structure and feel, and they keep doing a lot of the same things, is because people like that about the other movies. And when people go see a Marvel movie, they know that stuff's going to be in there when they go see it. When you go see a DC movie, you're not really sure what you're going to get. And that can work for an original movie sometimes, like an Inception. You're like, oh, what's that going to be? I need to go see it. Or a Black Swan. but it necessarily doesn't work. It doesn't necessarily work for like superhero films and action movies and all that stuff. So it's a lot of factors, but WB's biggest mistake is they just didn't, after the Christopher Nolan Batman films, they had a great opportunity to really bring Superman into the world and make him popular. Like Batman was bigger now, and Batman never died off, but you know, Nolan with Dark Knight, Dark Knight Rises, Batman was becoming bigger than he ever was, and you know, the video game started to come out and everything started to get huge again. That didn't really happen with Superman like it should have. And had they actually done well with that franchise and actually taken the time to make Man of Steel a good movie and not rush the production, they've rushed the production in all these movies. Zack Snyder didn't even get a lot of prep time for any of those films. He got very little prep time for Batman v Superman, and he got very little prep time for Justice League. He was kind of just thrown into these movies. A different director should have done each movie so they could come in and start working on it. Snyder just got in over his head. I don't totally even blame him. I think they gave him way too much to do. They said, hey, you have to make all these films. You have to make a Superman movie. Then you have to make a Batman Superman movie. Then you have to make a team movie. You know, not one person can do everything. Okay, it's not that kind of thing. You know, one guy should do Superman, one guy should do the Batman stuff, and another guy should do the team movie. Joss Whedon, that makes sense him doing Avengers. He's an ensemble guy. That doesn't mean Joss Whedon should do every superhero. People have different strengths. The trailers didn't really let audience know the villain was at all. No, Steppenwolf was very undersold in the trailers for sure. Big time. I don't blame them because he was a terrible villain, but it didn't help the movie at all not giving... Because people are wondering why the team was even getting together. I had so many people ask me, who are they fighting? Who's the bad guy in this movie? And I'd be like, Steppenwolf. And people are like, who's Steppenwolf? There are so many small, amazing movies out. WB probably, though, they could turn Snyder into their Joss Whedon. I don't know why they thought that. Joss Whedon had a background in television and writing. He was a writer, and he had written a lot of quippy dialogue and done ensemble pieces on Buffy, Firefly, and that. I don't know why they thought Zack Snyder, who had made some ensemble films like Watchmen and Dawn of the Dead. I don't know why they thought he was the guy to give all these characters to, because he was never really a writer. James Gunn wrote the screenplay. 300 is almost exactly like Frank Miller's comic. Watchmen's very loyal to the original book and had screenwriters on it, David Hayter and them. And Sucker Punch was one of the only things he wrote, and that's a terrible screenplay. And yeah, I don't know why they thought. And then bringing in David Goyer, or Chris Terrio, you know, I don't know why. Once again, Paul Dini's there. You could hire him. You could bring in so many people that could come in and probably write a pretty decent Superman or Batman movie, and you go with a guy that really wasn't known for his writing. He was known for his visual style, which is fine if you just want Zack Snyder to do the visuals, but it's like they wanted him to come up with the stories and stuff and gave him a lot of creative control, which makes no sense to me. I don't know why they thought he was the pick for that. He didn't seem like the guy to me to run a franchise. You know, I mean, you know, they obviously are gonna regret that decision now. I mean, it didn't pay off, but it is weird. All right, I spent way too much time talking about Justice League. Let me talk about some of the other movies here. I didn't know how much time I actually spent talking about. It is a bad villain named Steppenwolf. You're not wrong. It really is. Well, Christopher Nolan just had his name on the movie. He had nothing to do with it. It's like Man of Steel. Like, they advertised his name all over that. All that happened with Man of Steel was Nolan went in with David Goyer and came up with the pitch for Superman kind of being an alien, coming up with the Day the Earth Stood Still approach. And that's all Nolan did. He had very little input, and he had no input on Batman v Superman or this movie. But they still used Christopher Nolan's name. But that's because he has a great relationship with the studio. His movies always make money, and his name means something to a lot of people. So, I mean, you know, look at what Dunkirk did great. So, but he has nothing. He's not involved. I wish Chris Nolan was more involved. I wish he was more involved with producing and working on these films. And I get he doesn't want to direct, but I wish he was there actually working on the screenplays and overseeing the movies more and giving advice and helping them out. That sucks. Snyder and Gareth Edwards and two guys that should have been second unit directors only. I don't disagree. I do think Gareth Edwards, they do feel like glorified second or cinematographers. They're guys who probably should have become DPs or cameramen or second unit guys who do really good stuff, but they shouldn't be directing, because directing is creating a flow for a movie and telling a story and giving pace and tone. And those are different than just visuals. Visuals are an aspect of that. But there's a lot of factors to making a movie. It's very tough to make a movie. It's very tough to get tone and pace right. And a lot of people, that's not their strengths. You know, if you're a visual guy and you can make a beautiful image, that doesn't mean you're great at creating a moment that has emotion to it, or that's funny or serious. And Snyder just doesn't seem to have a lot of skill with actors. Dawn of the Dead, I don't get. Dawn of the Dead's very well directed and has very good acting, and I don't know what happened after that movie. He lost a lot, and then he gets that great performance from Jackie Earle Haley in Watchmen. He's just inconsistent. It's like his focus. You could tell the stuff he's interested in. Like when Tim Burton made his Batman movies, the stuff that's cool about them, like Jack Nicholson's Joker, you could tell that's what he was into. Or he didn't seem to give a damn about Batman or Bruce Wayne or the people of Gotham and stuff. You could see where people's interests lie. That's the main issue. And Zack Snyder, you know, he clearly always goes for the visual because he thinks it's cool, and that's fine, but that maybe isn't the guy who should be running a whole franchise of movies. You know, you need a guy who's always thinking, what's the story? What's the story we tell here? What storylines are we going to? You know, Zack Snyder just throws everything together hoping it'll stick. And I don't entirely blame him, though. There's just bad producing on these movies. Everyone who produces on his films has done a terrible job. For him and everyone who works on those movies. You know, the producers should be held responsible, too. Everyone just blindly wants to blame Zack Snyder for everything. It's not just his fault. Okay, we need to blame Warner Brothers for a lot of the stuff they do during production, when they cut the movies up, what they're telling him to do and not do. All of that factors in. It's not just Zack Snyder is a one man who ruined everything. There's a lot of people that did a lot of stuff that resulted in this. All right, let's talk about some other movies now. Kingsman: The Golden Circle, still at $393 million worldwide, $99 million domestic. So it's probably going to end its total around $100 to $101. That is disappointing domestically when compared to the original film. And worldwide, it hasn't passed the original film, despite having a bigger budget. But I guarantee you that film's made a profit, because $393 million on a $100 million budget just seems like it's going to be profitable. You would have to assume. But still, Kingsman: The Golden Circle, it did not hold that well. And it's really weird. It makes you wonder about the future of that franchise. Is Matthew Vaughn going to come back? If they make a Kingsman 3, how much are they going to spend on it? Because it seems to have lost its popularity domestically. And once again, that was a poor marketing campaign and how they nurtured that franchise. I think bringing Colin Firth, not Farrell, was a mistake. I think part of the emotional appeal and what made that first movie impactful was that he died and would have helped the second film. But in the trailers, you see Colin Firth and you're like, wait, what? And it's stupid how he comes back in the movie itself. But even in the trailers, you're like, wait a minute. They didn't just want to make a sequel to Kingsman. They wanted, once again, to keep you held on to the first season. It's like I said about Stranger Things Season 2. It was nostalgic for Season 1. It didn't stop to think, how do we separate this from Season 1? It was a lot of, hey, remember what you liked about Season 1? We're doing it again. Which is, I don't think it's ever a good way to go into something. I think it's always better to think, this is its own thing. Let's look at it that way. But, you know, it's tough. It's what it is. Okay, Blade Runner 2049. Let's see how that's doing. $249 million worldwide, $155 million budget, which is from a lot of sources, not just here. This one says 150, but it's a bit more than that. And yeah, they said the movie needed to break 400 million to break even. That was according to the producers of the film in a Hollywood Reporter article. Apparently, Sony's made their money back from the distribution, because they didn't take any back end. So they get all the money up front. So any profit this did make, Sony got back. And Sony put like $100 million into the movie. So they made quite a bit of their money back. But Alcon, who I think put a lot of money into the marketing and the rest of the money to make the movie and all those factors, they're saying they're going to lose. I think they probably put about $80 million or $90 million into the movie, is what I'm guessing. And they said they're going to lose. They're pretty much going to lose all of that. The people who actually got the movie made and produced it. And Sony distributed it internationally, and Warner Brothers was the domestic distributor. And I don't know if Warner Brothers made any money. We're going to have to wait a few months down the road to see what it all comes out to. But yeah, not doing good. That's what you would call a flop. Where Justice League's a disappointment, Blade Runner 2049 is just kind of a flop. Let's move up. Lady Bird, 2.5 million, 110% increase. This movie's doing really well so far. It was, the original release, I think it was in like 30 theaters. Now it's in 238. It's already made 4.7 domestically. This is directed by Greta Gerwig, who was in some Noah Baumbach movies. And it's one of the best reviewed films of the year. It currently has 100% on Rotten Tomatoes with 140 reviews and 94 on Metacritic. It looks like it's going to be getting some Oscar nominations. This is the year of the first-time director. Get Out did well. This is doing well. Aaron Sorkin's Molly's Game is coming out soon. That's his first movie. It feels like a lot of directors there might even be a couple who get Best Director nominations at the Academy Awards who haven't directed a lot of movies. Because it just wasn't a year of the experience, guys. Outside of Nolan this year, and then at the end of the year, Paul Thomas Anderson's probably going to have pretty good reception for his movie, The Phantom Thread. This wasn't the year of the experienced director. You know, a lot of them, maybe M. Night, but a lot of the movies that really are getting the praise this year or seem to be doing really well are from like even Patty Jenkins. She had just made Monster, and she hadn't made a movie for years since that. And Monster did really well, but you know, it was over a decade ago, and that, you know, then she makes Wonder Woman, and it's one of the most successful films of the year. The guy who did Spider-Man: Homecoming, he just did the movie Cop Car. Taika Waititi. He just made, you know, a couple comedy, lower-budget independent films before he did this, and now he made one of the most successful blockbusters of the year. So it was a good year for a lot of newcomers, guys who haven't been around a long time, and that's interesting. A Bad Mom's Christmas, 39% drop, which is not bad, but I have said in comparison to the original film, I think they released this too soon. The first film had a $23 million opening weekend and held until it reached $113 million domestic and $183 million worldwide on a $20 million budget. But, and this was, these guys directed 21 and over, and I think they wrote The Hangover? Let me go look. Yeah, these are the guys who wrote the screenplay to The Hangover, Four Christmases, Ghosts of Girlfriends Past. I was trying to say Days of Future Past, then I was like, wait, that's the X-Men. Yeah, Ghosts of Girlfriends Past. And then The Change Up, which was a movie with, I think, Jason Bateman and Ryan Reynolds, was it? Yeah. Where, yeah, they switch places. So these guys have been kind of writing mediocre to okay comedies for a while, and they really had their breakout with writing The Hangover. But then they directed Bad Moms, which ended up being a surprise hit, and that was the year Ghostbusters came out. Everyone was like, oh, nobody wants to go see a movie with women in it. And then Bad Moms was a hit. But A Bad Mom's Christmas only comes out a year after, and I just don't think that was the best idea. They didn't give enough time for the hype to kind of build. It feels a little too soon. You go from a $23 million opening weekend to a $16 million opening weekend. The movie comes out quite a while before Christmas, November 1st. Like, I think they should have released this closer to Thanksgiving, like next weekend, and then let it play, or even this weekend, or maybe wait till December even, like early December. This will most likely get a boost during the holidays, but it feels like by the time Christmas comes around, which this is a Christmas movie, this movie will pretty much be done. So I think a big problem is they released this way too early. They released a Christmas movie and it's not Christmas time. You know, we were still kind of going off Halloween at this point, coming off Halloween. So, but it's made $77 million worldwide on a $28 million budget. I'm sure it's going to make profit, but it doesn't seem like it's going to touch the original film's domestic total, or even at all. It's going to touch the worldwide total. But if this makes 100-something million worldwide, that's not a failure. I just think they could have had a movie that did a lot better had they handled it differently. I think their biggest mistake was release and relying on the Christmas gimmick. The Christmas gimmick is not paying off for every movie. It's like Daddy's Home 2 doing the Christmas thing. It's like, I don't know if Christmas is the best marketing thing all the time. Sometimes, but a lot of movies that do well during Christmas aren't Christmas movies, like Django or The Revenant came out during Christmas and were huge hits, and they weren't Christmas movies. I don't think a Christmas movie always has to be a movie about Christmas, and I don't think people just go see movies about Christmas on Christmas. They go see Star Wars. That's the Christmas movie, is Star Wars. The Star, $10 million opening weekend. That's really not that bad. I thought it would do a lot worse than this. The stars Tracy Morgan and Tyler Perry as voices. This is an animated film, I guess. I don't know a lot about this film. $20 million budget. Excuse me. And $10 million opening weekend. Directed by Timothy Reckart. I don't know that movie. It sounds like a low budget. Does anyone know what The Star is? Can somebody tell me what is that an animated movie? What's it about? Is it about a star? Or something like that? It's just about a star. It just follows a star. What do you think of up-and-coming A24? I like A24 quite a bit. I don't like everything they do, but I appreciate what they're trying to do with that company, and they've clearly had success. It's been working out for them. I mean, haven't they already had like a few films get nominated for Best Picture and win a couple? Haven't they had like a great track record so far? Guess I'm not the only one who hated Gareth's Godzilla. Well, you shouldn't be. That movie's awful. It's a terrible movie. It's legit like it's not even a good big budget B monster fight movie. It doesn't even work in that way. It fails as the kind of movie he's trying to make, which is the Spielberg, like, dramatic military. The son goes on the journey after his parents die. He kills the most interesting character 15 minutes in. It doesn't work as the movie he was trying to make, and it doesn't work as a dumb Godzilla movie. And if it had worked as either one, I'd have no problem with it. I wouldn't mind if it was just Godzilla, but he doesn't even want to show you that stuff. He doesn't even care about that stuff. It's so terrible. It is animated. What's it about, though? What's it about? Like, I have no idea. Oh, it's about the nativity. Oh, okay, that makes sense. All right, that makes sense. So it's like a religious film. There will be a spinoff to Bad Moms. It'll be I'm shocked they haven't. I'm shocked they haven't made Bad Dads. Where's Bad Dads? Okay, so The Star is about the nativity. That makes... Oh, the picture wasn't up before. Now I see it. Oh, so it's about the animals during the nativity. That's hilarious. Oh my god. I see it now. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Murder on the Orient Express. A steeper second week drop than I would have expected. 13.8 million, 51% drop, and coincidentally 51 mil domestic. But the worldwide total, not bad at all. $55 million budget and $148 million worldwide, and I think that's going to go up. I don't know what their break-even point is, but I'm sure this will make over $200 million, and that'll look pretty good. The opening weekend was surprisingly high. It was higher than what a lot of people expected, but that second weekend drop is steep enough to make me think this isn't going to make $100 million now. Where would I see this ending up? I could see this making $75 million. Maybe even 80, but I could see it... Well, the holidays, it might get that boost. But if this makes over 70 mil domestic, and let's say it makes like $150 million at the international box office, then, you know, that's not too bad. You know, you're looking at like 220. So, you know, if this makes like 220, 230 million worldwide, if not a little bit more, I think they're going to make a profit off of it. I think their high-end hope would be 300 million worldwide, but you can't go in expecting that. I'm really excited about Paddington 2. Paddington was one of my favorite films the year it came out. It should have been released during Christmas, and they decided to release it early in 2016, and I think it hurt the box office domestically. But that film was one of my favorite children's films in years. It's timeless. And the sequel's coming out now, and the reviews I've been reading is the sequel is even better than the first film. And the guy who directed those films, Paul King, he did that show, The Mighty Boosh, and he's a wonderful filmmaker, and I love his visual style. And I think he perfectly executed the tone of Paddington. And like I said, Paddington is legit one of my favorite films of the last few years. I loved it. So I'm very excited for that, and I can't wait to see how that performs. Because that one, David Hyman produced that, the guy who does the Harry Potter films. And who's also producing Quentin Tarantino's new film. So he might be getting a Best Picture nomination. But 150 million worldwide, not bad for Murder on the Orient Express. You know, I'm not going to say it's overperforming now like it was last weekend, but... it's not a flop, and you can see why the studio made it, and for Kenneth Branagh, it's another success. So it keeps his career going. He's really become a successful director financially last few years. He was always a cult guy, and some of his films did well. And, you know, he got good reviews, and him and his wife were popular, but he's made some blockbusters now, you know? Or films that, you know, $55 million budget, that's pretty modest for today, but he's still not a cheap movie. And he got all these big-name actors, but he's showing that he can get a return. So, you know, kudos to Branagh for that, and I think I've always been a fan of his, and I'm happy for him that his stuff does well. I haven't seen this movie. I'm probably going to watch it on television or something. It just wasn't the kind of movie I wanted to go rush to see at the theater. If I'd heard it was great, because I love the original movie and I love the book, and the original movie was a big hit. You know, we looked last week and adjusted ticker price for inflation, and the original movie made like $130 million in the 70s, so... you know, it's just a popular thing. You know, people know the story, they know the detective, they know, you know, so it was a smart move. So kudos to Fox. I don't know if they're the ones who did everything on that movie, but now we're on to Daddy's Homes 2 from Paramount. Who's the distributor of this film. That's a movie with a $69 million budget. The first film, I don't know what the budget was on the first one. I'm going to have to go look at that if they have it up here. I can't imagine it was low. It's not, I'm going to guess it was like 50 million. I'm just going to guess that because I'm sure Mark and Will Ferrell got paid a lot. But if you don't know, Daddy's Home came out a couple years ago. It was a big surprise hit. It came out on Christmas. It had a huge opening weekend of 38 million, then a 29 million second weekend. Great second week. It really played well over the holidays. And it was mixing Mark Wahlberg, who has a lot of star power in comedies and action films, with Will Ferrell's star power. And Will Ferrell seems to do best with his movies when he's working with other people, like John C. Reilly in his movies do really well. When he does an Anchorman movie, old school. It seems like when Will Ferrell's just by himself, outside of Elf, his movies don't do as well. But putting the two of them together worked out really well for the movie The Other Guys, and it worked out even better here. And this was one of Will Ferrell's most successful movies. And worldwide, I think it's one of his highest grossing ones, because typically Will Ferrell movies don't do very well. Like most comedies, they don't do very well at the foreign box office like they do, because comedy doesn't always transfer to other parts of the world, American comedy. Yeah, Daddy's Home was his third most successful film. And the films above it, like Megamind and Lego Movie, are animated films. Austin Powers, he has a cameo, and Wedding Crashers is a cameo. So yeah, there it is, Elf. So yeah, Daddy's Home's pretty much Will Ferrell's most successful leading live-action film. And then Elf. And worldwide, then The Other Guys. So you just see right there that it was a big return for him and Mark Wahlberg. So now that they're making Daddy's Home 2, which costs a little bit more, it's another movie that's about Christmas, and they bring in Mel Gibson and John Lithgow. And last weekend it opened to 39 million. Oh, well, 29.6. I didn't see that it got adjusted. And now in its second weekend, it dropped pretty steep. The last one only had a 24% drop, but that's because it came out around Christmas. Once again, this is a film I feel like would have played better around Christmas. I don't know why they released this so early. I think December would have been a better release. Not at Christmas, but a little bit before. Because Star Wars can share the wealth. I know everyone's so scared of Star Wars making all the money, but if Star Wars opens to 220 million, that doesn't mean another film couldn't make money too. People are out at the theater seeing movies. Christmas is that holiday where everyone could get a little bit. Yeah, Daddy's Home 2 is just not that 50% drop. That's not a great sign. I don't know if it'll make 100 million. I don't think so, and I think it's gonna have to scratch to get there, because look at that. Murder on the Orient Express had a lower opening weekend, and it's ahead of it already. And neither film looks like it's going to make 100 million domestic. So that's disappointing. I was hoping those were going to perform better for the people involved. They're going to have to rely a little bit more on the foreign box office. And I don't know how that's exactly going to work out for Daddy's Home 2. But we'll just have to wait and see. We'll have to see if how this will do over the holidays. It's so early in its release, and we're still a month and a half from Christmas, really. So it's just kind of... I don't know how much of a benefit the film's going to get from the holidays. It'll help with the final total, but Thor this weekend, 21 million third weekend. Another steepest drop for Thor Ragnarok, which had a terrific opening weekend. Actually, a really steep drop. The second weekend was a 53% drop, and this weekend was a 61% drop, which is a very big drop for the third weekend. I think you can contribute that to Justice League, though, because really, if Justice League hadn't come out this weekend, Thor probably would have, it'd been more of like a 55% drop, but I did think Justice League probably pulled from it. The thing is, though, the movie's already been out for a couple weeks and made a lot of its money. It's at $247 million domestic at a $180 million budget. And last weekend, when we looked at the worldwide box office, it was at $650 million after 2 weeks of release. Well, about 2.5 because they already released it. No, 3 weeks because they already released it internationally. But here we are. It's been out for about a month all around the world, 3 weeks here. And we're at 738 million worldwide. So we're not quite 100 million more from last weekend, but it's at $490 million foreign. I said it would do 500. I was wrong. It's going to do way more than that. So we're still looking at a film that's going to make over 800 million worldwide. I'm not sure if it'll make 850 million like I was saying, or more than that, but still making over 800 million worldwide for the third Thor movie, and it cost 180 million. Successful. You know, I mean, it's performing better than Justice League. Well, we'll put it that way. But that's not a great third weekend. But this film still has quite of a run. I don't think it'll make 300 million now. Early on, you said, "Oh, it's going to make at least 300," but now it looks like it's probably going to wrap up. Like, I mean, it still might make 290 million, which is huge. It's going to pass the over 100 million over the budget. But there's no doubt they've made a profit off this movie already, and then some. I'm sure they've already made $100 million and then some off this movie. I have to assume. But let me see. If you guys have any questions, get them ready for the next string of movies, because I can't see everything. So, yeah. Anyway, 738 million worldwide. That's a great total. That puts it above the total of the previous two Thor movies, which it already was. And I think that puts it above Doctor Strange, Ant-Man, and it looks like it's about to surpass Captain America: The Winter Soldier, which made, I think that made 760 million worldwide. Let me go look. I'm going to have to go double check that. Oh, crap, typo. Sorry, people. Winter Soldier made 259 million. No, it made 714. So it's already past Winter Soldier. My bad. So, let's just pick Kevin Feige's name, and then we can look at all the movies and see where it stands. Actually, let's not look adjusted, because that's not fair. Okay, worldwide. So worldwide, Thor Ragnarok is number 10. And it's behind Guardians 1, Guardians 2, Spider-Man Homecoming, Civil War, Iron Man 3, and the Avengers films. So that's a great performance, because Spider-Man's Spider-Man, you know, and the Guardians films, they kind of became their own thing apart from Marvel in a way. And then you have Captain America, Civil War, which was Avengers 2.5, then Iron Man 3, who's the most popular character, and that came after the Avengers, and the Avengers film. So, and Thor's going to pass Guardians 1. I don't know if it'll pass Guardians 2, I don't see it, but still, that's great. That's a great performance for Ragnarok, because I wouldn't have thought Thor was going to be in the top, you know, top 7 or 8, and look at that, ahead of Doctor Strange, Iron Man 1 and 2, Ant-Man, just a lot of the other characters so far. And I think Black Panther's going to do really, really well, but I don't know if it'll make this kind of money. We'll have to wait and see. But Thor Ragnarok, great marketing and great release, and made Thor. This kind of puts Thor in a new popularity area. This is kind of like how Winter Soldier came out, and that made Captain America even more popular, to where it led into Warner Brothers. They're having the most successful year, aren't they? Warner Brothers was It, and then Wonder Woman. Those two movies alone have to be two of the most profitable films, right? So, and there's a few more. God, who's the other one? There's like 3. They've had like 4 movies. They released Annabelle Creation, I think, was them too. So Warner Brothers is having a very good year, where Sony's having a very mediocre year to a bad year without Spider-Man, which was Marvel helping them, and Baby Driver. Yeah, look at Warner Brothers. They have Wonder Woman, It, Dunkirk, the Lego Batman movie, Kong Skull Island, Annabelle Creation, and then they have some movies that didn't do well. These all didn't do really well. But they're going to make so much money off Wonder Woman and It that all this other stuff isn't going to matter as much. And the Lego Batman movie did really well, and Kong Skull Island did pretty good, actually. Made 566 million worldwide, and Annabelle Creation did really well. So, yeah, I'd say Warner Brothers is having the best year right now. They're gonna have they're probably gonna have the most profits until Last Jedi comes out, because I'm sure Last Jedi is gonna make a lot of money for Disney. But having Wonder Woman and It and Dunkirk is huge for them, because all of these are going to get Oscar nominations. I promise you, It's going to get a couple Oscar noms. I feel it. Wonder Woman might even get Oscar nom, even though I don't think it deserves any. It just feels like that's the climate we're in right now, and the Academy is going to be responding to all the stuff happening right now, and they're going to use Wonder Woman as a way to, like, say, hey, even though Wonder Woman's not the superhero film that deserves the Oscar nominations, I legit think it could get a Best Picture nomination just because of the state Hollywood's in right now. It wouldn't shock me. And then Dunkirk's definitely going to be nominated for a bunch of Oscars, and if it came out just now, it would be the front runner, but it came out during summer. But it's also done very well, so they're having a really good year. So I'll definitely take Warner Brothers over them. And I just think Warner Brothers, for the most part, has some good properties and handles some stuff really well, while Sony just seems like in disaster mode. Disney pwned Netflix by getting them to test out the viability of larger budget Marvel streaming and then pulled the rug. Yeah, they definitely did. And all the new Marvel shows, the ABC ones that are on Netflix, they're starting to look really cheap. Like the Punisher looks cheap, the Defenders look cheap. It looks like Netflix isn't putting money into this stuff. I don't think James Cameron's going senile. I think he just says stuff to get his name in the press and get things going, and that's just kind of how he is. I don't think he's like crazy. James Cameron apparently believes Zack Snyder has created a new visual language. I don't know. I mean, Christopher Nolan likes Michael Bay movies. I don't know. It's just opinion, you know. If James Cameron likes what Zack Snyder does, that's cool for him. Yeah, that's all it's going to be. If Wonder Woman gets nominated, it's just going to be a response to that stuff. To be like, hey, look, we're not evil. We like women. That's all it's going to be, because that would just blow my mind. Let's talk about another big story this weekend. Wonder. What a surprisingly good opening weekend for this film. Oh my god. Directed by Steven Chbosky, who, if you don't know, wrote and directed The Perks of Being a Wallflower. And he wrote the original book, which is one of my favorite YA books, and I love this movie. This movie has flaws. It's got problems, but I think Logan Lerman and Ezra Miller in particular are so good in this movie. And it does feel like John Hughes, Cameron Crowe at its best, and it kind of transcends. This was a movie I was shocked it didn't do better. Because this is a movie I know so many girls in particular I know have all seen this movie now. I showed it. I live near a college and I showed a screening of this movie, and it did really. A lot of people showed up. Like 60 people showed up to watch this movie. And I remember when it came out, they only released it in 745 theaters. It only did 17 million domestic. It didn't open that great. It never caught on, and it got really good reviews. I've seen this movie like 4 times, and I really like it, and I like the book, and I thought it was going to be a hit. It wasn't a bomb because it didn't cost much, but, you know, when you see a film like The Fault in Our Stars making 300 million worldwide, I thought this was going to be one of those films. I thought this at least was going to make 100 million worldwide, but I said at the time, the release of this film, Lionsgate and Summit did a horrible job releasing this film, and the marketing for this film wasn't great, and they ruined what could have been a hit movie. You know, this could have been, in my mind, a film that made $100 million worldwide. Even though it was a lower-budget film, it had that appeal like those YA films do, and it's one of the better ones, and I really like Steven Chbosky. But he also worked on the screenplay to Rent, which is a horrible screenplay, and just a horrible film adaptation. And he also wrote the screenplay to Beauty and the Beast, which I did not like. And I think he also worked on the what's it called? Those movies with Shailene Woodley that they quit making because they did so bad after the third. Divergent? He wrote one of the Divergent films. So all of the stuff he's written after Perks I haven't been a big fan of, but I do like him a lot, and I think Perks was a very well-directed movie. That's one thing that really got me about that movie, was how well-directed it was. And it was his first movie, and he had this real maturity and sensitivity as a filmmaker. I don't like all YA stuff, but I like good YA. I think Perks is very good YA. And I don't care if anyone says Catcher in the Rye is YA, and even To Kill a Mockingbird is very YA, and there's a lot of classic books that read like YA, and people it's like anything. Any genre can have good and bad stuff in it. It's not just bad because it's in YA. It depends on who's writing it and what they're doing with it. But this movie called Wonder that he directed with the kid from Room, Jacob Tremblay, the Canadian kid who got all that praise for his terrific performance in Room. I think he got an Oscar nomination for that movie. He plays a kid that has he has something wrong with him. I don't know, he has something wrong with his face. He looks like he has the mask face that Eric Stoltz had in that movie. So I'm not really sure, but this film is getting really good reviews. It has 84% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's got a 7.2 average. It stars Julia Roberts and Owen Wilson, who haven't had that great of a box office record lately. They used to be go-to people. Julia Roberts was in a bunch of hits in the 90s, and Owen Wilson was in a string of hits, you know. But I don't think anyone expected this to do as well. You know, it's pretty much getting on par with the reviews of his last film, Perks of Being a Wallflower. So he's having a pretty successful directing career so far. He went from making a YA adaptation of his own book that got really good reviews that didn't do that well, but I'm sure it's done well on video. Then he worked on Beauty and the Beast, which was a huge hit. But now his own film that he wrote and directed had a great opening weekend. And I don't know what factored into that. Was it the cast? Was it the story? Was it the trailer? Young adult. YA's young adult. Like young adult fiction. You know, there's a YA section at the library. It's books for, anyone from like a young teen and all that stuff. But yeah, I can't believe how well this did. I mean, it blows my mind. This is way overperforming. I would have thought, I didn't think the movie was gonna bomb. Maybe I thought it'll probably open okay, but for him as a director to not really have his name out there, and he had his last film didn't do that great. And Owen Wilson and Julia Roberts. I don't know why Owen Wilson's name isn't listed, but if you look at Julia Roberts, she hasn't been in a hit movie in a while. The Secret in Their Eyes, Money Monster, Mother's Day, Orange County, Mirror Mirror did okay, but it cost a lot of money to make Mirror Mirror. Oh yeah, the Tarsem movie. Valentine's Day. Eat, Pray, Love did pretty good. But she hasn't had a movie had an opening weekend like this in, God, since Eat, Pray, Love with 23 million. All of her movies have had pretty mediocre opening weekends or just okay. Like even Mirror Mirror opened at 18 million. But Owen Wilson, this is one of his best performances in a long time. Like, wow, 3,000 theaters. I don't know. I don't know if it was just Julia Roberts and the appeal, the title Wonder. I really don't know. I didn't see the trailers for this movie. Did anyone watch a trailer for this movie? Wonder? I don't know if anyone, did anyone watch a trailer for this movie? I didn't even see the trailers for this movie. I knew it was coming out and I read about it, but, that's a terrific opening weekend. I mean, a 27 million opening weekend for a film like this. I don't expect this movie cost too much to make. It's a Lionsgate release. Let's see how they've been doing this year. Oh, they put the Hunger Games up there. Yeah. Oh, it's not yearly. Yeah, let's have yearly. I want my yearly. Let's check 2017. Okay. See how they're doing. Oh, yeah, they count La La Land because it's carrying over. John Wick Chapter 2, Power Rangers, Hitman's Bodyguard, The Shack, Tyler Perry's 2, All Eyes on Me, stuff like that. But, yeah, this is a terrific, especially, yeah, for them. They haven't had a lot of films do that great this year. So, kudos to everyone who worked on this movie, the director, the cast, everyone for, because it's just not the kind of film you think would have that good of an opening weekend. That's a really good opening weekend. I mean, that's the same opening weekend, basically, as Murder on the Orient Express, which had a bunch of big-name actors and a much higher concept. Oh, no, I hate Eat, Pray, Love, too, but it's like a really popular... I think Eat, Pray, Love was a book. It's really popular, so that might be it. Is Wonder based off a book? I want to see Wonder. I'm sure it is like schmaltzy and schlocky and all that, but it doesn't mean it's bad. I do like the director. But yeah, great opening weekend. Honestly, a much better performing weekend than Justice League's. Like a 27 million opening weekend for this film is more impressive than Justice League's 96 million opening weekend. All right, so let's see if there's anything I missed real quick, and we'll wrap this up here. Jigsaw's at 88 million worldwide on a $10 million budget. Not bad, but not performing up to the Saw series back in its prime. American Made, Tom Cruise, Doug Liman is at 133 million. I guess that's pretty much done with its run. Last Flag Flying, the Richard Linklater film, had a 33% drop this weekend. Not doing that well at all. In 59 theaters, looks like it's not connecting. Bad year for a lot of indie films. A lot of indie films aren't doing good this year. Like, really bad. They're not really making an impact. But a lot of movies in release. The Killing of a Sacred Deer had a 58% drop. That's a big drop for that movie. Victoria and Abdul had a 67% drop. But that's 61 million worldwide, which is not bad. The Florida Project had a drop. That seems like it's a lot of these movies that were doing well the last few weeks are all dropping really bad this week, and a lot of them here. I mean, look at all the red here. Minus 68, minus 58, 75, 23, 6, 39, 82, 67. Nothing held well this weekend down here. This is really weird. Oh, there's that 3 Billboards movie that's been getting great reviews with Frances McDormand in it, and this movie's been getting like great reviews. It's one of the best reviewed films of the year. It's in 53 theaters. That's a decent opening, 1 million. We'll see how that goes down the road, though. Lady Bird's doing really well. That's the one that seems to be catching on with people. I've been hearing comparisons to Rushmore with that movie. So let's get back to Justice League real quick. Okay, so it's the foreign box office is 185 million, which is good. That is a solid international showing, and it's at 281 million worldwide, which I think that's about on par with the Avengers. when the Avengers opened. It's international because I think the Avengers was like made like 180 something million. So that's a good opening. That doesn't mean it's going to hold though. But we don't know this film's going to play in places like China. This might make $300 million in China for all we know. You don't know how well it's going to play in Japan or any of the Germany, anything like that. You never know how well a film's going to, because what we maybe don't like here, our sensibilities, they might work really well in another place. But that opening weekend is abysmal. But that's just domestically, so the foreign box office might carry them over. That is a good showing, 185 million. I'm not sure what Batman v Superman's international opening was, but I think we can go find out if we go back to the past here. Oh, great, they don't have the article up. Well, they used to have articles about that, but that movie had a beast of a domestic opening, and I can't remember what the worldwide opening was on Batman v Superman. I just off the top of my head, but it ended up making 542 million domestic, which this already seems like it's on par to do that. That's a pretty good foreign opening, 185. So I could see it doing like 500 million. Yo, make classic foreign movie reviews like Kung Fu Hustle. Is that a classic? Isn't that a newer movie? I mean, I think it's a great movie, but I don't know if it's been around long enough to be a class. I guess it was kind of an instant classic though. But I should talk about foreign movies more. You're not wrong. Right now, I'm watching a couple movies, trying to get through them for reviews. The movies I've seen, but I'm just rewatching them. I'm watching The Gospel According to St. Matthew by Pasolini, who is most famous for probably directing Salo. But this is his Christ film, which is, to me, the best film ever made about Christ. It's like if you followed Christ and it was done in a documentary student film-like fashion. It's one of the least pretentious films ever made about religion. Pasolini was a homosexual. He was a devout atheist. He was an intellectual. I love his writings, his poetry. I would highly recommend this film. You can watch it on YouTube. Now, this has this really kind of like, it's got some odd audio dubbing and stuff, but if you just want to watch the movie, it's on YouTube, and that's where I'm watching it right now. And then I'm also watching When We Were Kings, which is the Muhammad Ali, George Foreman documentary that won the Academy Award in the 90s, which is one of the best documentaries you will ever see. When Muhammad Ali goes to Africa for that fight. And it mainly follows Ali. There is footage with George Foreman, but that film is about class, race, determination, culture. It's an amazing movie. I recommend both of those. Watch When We Were Kings. You can find that very easily. It's only about 85 minutes long. And it did win, it's a very popular documentary. It's like bringing up Hoop Dreams. Everyone knows Hoop Dreams, but it's one of my favorite documentaries, like top 10. And if you're a fan of Muhammad Ali and if you're a fan of boxing and sports, it's worth watching. But if you're not a fan of those things at all, what might shock you the most about the movie is that it's so engaging just as a film. It's just a bunch of footage of Ali giving these speeches, and he's so articulate and wonderful and has so much charisma. It just carries the movie. The movie has a great energy, and the editing of the movie is amazing. They edit it with like this jazz music and stuff. And Pasolini's Jesus film, If you're a fan of like the approach Spielberg took with Schindler's List, where he kind of treated it like a documentary and just kind of lets things play out and you kind of interpret it your own way for a lot of it, mainly the second half of Schindler's. That's kind of what he does with the Gospel According to St. Matthew. But there's some great filmmaking in it, his editing choices, and I really like the guy who plays Jesus in it a lot. And I just like the documentary approach to telling that story. It makes it, I don't know, it takes all of the grandeur and all the stuff about it that other filmmakers are so tempted to give it with symbolism, and even someone telling you about the Bible. It strips that all down and gives it the humanity that a lot of films don't have. Scorsese kind of did that with Temptation, but I think the Gospel According to St. Matthew is the best film ever made on about Jesus. And When We Were Kings is just amazing. That's just an amazing film. I know it's Adam Carolla's favorite documentary, which is, I've heard him talk about it a lot, but it's kind of one of those documentaries a lot of sports people are into if you're a sports guy, but it's still an amazing movie even if you're not into the sports aspect of it. Anything on Netflix that you can recommend? Right now on Netflix, I would recommend the documentary Jim and Andy, which is about Jim Carrey playing Andy Kaufman and being method about it on the set of Man on the Moon, which just came out. I'm going to do a review of that movie this week. It's Jim Carrey being a jerk for 90 minutes and just trying to fight the fact that he's doing a really good impression. He's trying to make himself believe he's Andy Kaufman, and it's a very good insight into Jim Carrey being kind of a douche. And it's a very revealing, honest movie and shows you kind of Jim Carrey's mindset. That's a movie I'd recommend. Netflix doesn't have a very good, doesn't have a lot on there now. They used to when I first, yeah, I own Sallow on DVD. Yes, I've seen Death Trip. Bill Nye has a great new series. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend the Bill Nye show. But there's not a lot on Netflix outside of the TV stuff. I honestly, yeah, watch Stranger Things, Mindhunter, all that stuff. But as far as their movies go, their movie catalog, when I first subscribed to Netflix, when I first became a member, they had a great movie variety. They had so much stuff that was terrific, that was really worth watching. I mean, they had the Killing Fields on there and stuff. And now I don't see a lot on there. Their classic section is empty. They have an LGBTQ section for some reason, even though that's only 3% of the population. But for some reason, gay people get overrepresented in everything that we do. I don't know why they get... There's only like 10 movies in that whole section in the queue. I don't know. I'm trying to think anything on Netflix. Schindler's List is on Netflix. I mean, there's a lot of stuff on there that's obvious to recommend. I don't know if there's any deep cuts on there. There used to be. Like, they used to have Errol Morris movies on there and stuff. I don't know if they have. They used to have Cassavetes films on Netflix. You used to be able to watch Cassavetes movies on there. I saw 3 Cassavetes films on Netflix when I first joined it. So, the thing that I would recommend right now, if you were to watch it, that's kind of just Netflix exclusive, if you haven't seen it, Beasts of No Nation, Mudbound, which just got uploaded there, Jim and Andy, Mindhunter. I'd recommend Friends from College with Fred Savage and the guy from Key and Peele. I think that's a pretty okay show right now. And if you haven't seen The Good Place with Kristen Bell and Ted Danson, it's from the guy who created Parks and Recreation. Go watch that show right now. That's on Netflix. If you haven't seen it, it's a sitcom. It's like great. It's a very intelligent, funny, good show, good sitcom. That's what I'm watching right now. I'm watching, Thin Blue Line. Thin Blue Line used to be on Netflix. I don't think it's on Netflix anymore. And when I first saw Thin Blue Line, it was on cable. But then I remember when it was on Netflix, I was so excited, and I watched it like 2 more times. So, damn it, Pat! Stop warning the Virgin and ruining the surprise for him. Yeah, I haven't seen all of Mindhunter. I've watched some of it, but I did like it a lot. So, I would definitely recommend Mindhunter if you just want to watch something that's on there, and Jim and Andy, and Beasts of No Nation. Those are all really good, and The Good Place is really good. That's all the stuff I'm watching right now. The Wonder Years is on there. It used to be on there. I don't know if it's still on there. It doesn't have the music of the original, but if you've never seen the one... Twin Peaks was on there. I don't know if Twin Peaks is still on. Battlestar Galactica used to be on there. There's a lot of stuff on there I used to watch. I don't think it's on there anymore. They used to have way more art films and foreign films on there, too, that they don't have anymore. But I'd recommend their documentaries more than anything. They have a great documentary section. And, documentaries, even if they're not great or always kind of interesting, you can learn something. Where a mediocre movie can be kind of a waste of your time. Where a documentary, at least you always kind of get some information. But I do like Mindhunter. I especially think the Mindhunter gets better as it goes on. It starts off kind of slow, and I was a little disappointed Fincher making it. It wasn't better, but once you really get into Mindhunter, like 4 or 5 episodes, you're like, okay, this is cool. And I can't wait to get to the finale of it. Yeah, he does. I agree. I totally agree with you. The acting in Mindhunter, the production value, the dialogue, it's all really good. You can tell they spent a lot of time working on it. I like it a lot. I can't wait to finish it and do a review of it. But the 2 things that I watched this week that are new on Netflix, Jim and Andy and Mudbound, and they were both really good. Jim and Andy was good for me in a weird way, where I almost kind of like... For me, it was less about Jim Carrey sitting there trying to be all deep and stuff, and it was more just kind of funny watching him not be self-aware. And then it made me upset because I saw how sad he was. He's very sad. But Mudbound's a really good movie, really well made, and I really like... I like a lot of stuff on Netflix, actually, Like, that's original Netflix content, like Cuckoo, that show with Andy Samberg and Taylor Lautner. I really thought that was a funny show. There's a lot of stuff that Netflix does that I actually do like. I haven't watched The Crown yet, but I want to get around to it. Yeah, Mindhunter was Fincher. And Fincher just didn't direct. He was involved with the writing and everything. He thought he was there with the characters and everything. He directs the first 2 episodes and the last 2 episodes. And everyone tells me the finale of Mindhunter's amazing. Like, all I've heard is the last episode of the season's great. But Fincher did the first 2 episodes, and they're just okay. They're decent. But then when you get to, like, episode 4, the show really gets good. And for where I'm at right now, I'm just like, it's so tense watching it, and I can't wait to see the second half. So Mindhunter is one of those shows. It's a slow burn. You got to commit to it. But when you do, it's very rewarding. Kind of like the first season of House of Cards, really. That was more rewarding as it went on. But I didn't love the first season of House of Cards as much as everyone else did. I think Mindhunter's a much better show. And it's more interesting, Fincher being involved with it and seeing his aesthetics and his themes. I think it works a lot better in Mindhunter. You can honestly see Mindhunter as a movie that he would have made, but it's cool. It's a show. But yeah, I definitely recommend Mindhunter if you haven't seen it. It might be a show you want to overlook. I wouldn't recommend The Punisher too much. I think it's a little too slow, but if you want to watch it, watch it. It shouldn't be as many episodes as it is. All those Marvel shows have terrible pacing. They all do. Jessica Jones had bad pacing. Luke Cage has bad pacing. The Defenders had bad... There's shows that should be 6 episodes or 7 episodes, and they always are 10 or 13, and it just doesn't work. And that's the big issue here. But let's look at Justice League a little bit before we wrap this up, because we've been going longer than I wanted. We're an hour and a half, and I'll finish up here soon. Here was my reaction when I looked at Justice League. First, let's use Eddie Murphy GIFs. I had this set up from last night. I'm going to use Eddie Murphy GIFs to show my feelings, what I went through with Justice League's opening weekend. This was my first reaction when I looked at the numbers on Deadline, that it was going to open at like 90-something million. That was my like, whoa! That's Eddie Murphy, and I'm not quite sure what this is. This looks like Nutty Professor. The first movie or the second movie. Then let's use Andy Murphy laughing, because this was my second reaction. After I was shocked and taken aback by the numbers, then I found humor in the situation. So now we have laughing Eddie Murphy in Delirious. I believe Raw is the one where he wears the red coat, and Delirious is this one. But yeah. Now this is my second reaction to Justice League after I took the initial shock. Then I found humor in the situation. It all just kind of hit me. Then I went to Absurd Eddie Murphy, Axel Foley, where I'm just like, it's gonna be okay, guys. We'll find a way. I was trying to find the optimism in the story, but it got harder and harder until eventually I just ended up like this, where I really didn't know what to say. My eyes were popping out of my head. I was very confused and disturbed because, you know, it went from shock to laughter to absurdity to sheer panic. And that was really the... Yeah, I love it. I love it, man. I love it. Yeah, it was a lot of this. A lot of this when I looked at the numbers like, oh. So, you know, just whenever I think about what I'm going through, I just try to connect it through Eddie Murphy GIFs. Yeah, a lot of this. There was a lot of this last night. Yeah, exactly. Always. Yeah, calling Warner Brothers to ask them what happened. How the hell did this happen? Yeah, just... See, this is how the people who made Wonder are being. This is how they feel, and then this is how the, yeah. Excuse me, what'd you say about Zack Snyder? Yeah, we need a few more... Yeah, let's get some Sherman. Yeah. Yeah, see, this is Warner Brothers. This is how they are right now, seeing those numbers. Just crying on the couch, you know. God, I saw that movie in the theater. That movie was great at the time, man. That was such a good... Yeah. Now we go to racist stereotype Eddie Murphy from Trading Places. Oh, and then let's go, yeah. As we got Mr. Robinson's Neighborhood. Yeah, good old SNL Eddie Murphy, because Christmas is not coming early for Warner Brothers. Oh, wait, we're back to Nutty Professor. Dancing Eddie. He's thrusting. That's audiences thrusting and effing the crap out of Justice League in their hopes and dreams. Oh, here's that sketch where he dressed up as a white guy on SNL. One of the funniest sketches of all time. That actually mocks white privilege in a very good way. So is there any more Eddie Murphy? Let's see. Let's run the gambit of Eddie Murphy emotions. Yeah. Yeah, that's terrific. That's Kevin Feige when he looked at the numbers. This was Kevin Feige's reaction when he saw it. He's like, yeah. And this is the producers just tossing around a very valuable object like it doesn't matter. It's very Oh, but let's put the Hercules one in there. Superman, 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 Superman. And let's do that big lift Eddie Murphy moment where his lips get gigantic. Yeah. Yeah, that's a freaky moment. Let's see. I got a couple. Let's see if I can get a couple more in here. I don't know why. It all last night came out to me in Eddie Murphy gifts. There we go. Yeah. Yeah, that's from Norbit or whatever. I think it was called Norbit, that terrible movie. Here's a shock look with him and Arsenio Hall in Coming to America. I think this is the cast and crew's reaction to the opening weekend. That's how I like to see it. And, ooh, Angry Eddie. Angry and confused. He ain't having none of it. Oh, here's him in that movie, I think, Boomerang? Is the name of that movie? This is Warner Brothers trying to make a nice face when they see the numbers. Like, what do you guys think about it? Yeah, it's great. It's great. We're not upset at all. We're not upset even slightly. When they're clearly devastated. Oh, maybe we can get some dramatic Eddie Murphy here. Yeah. Oh, okay, yeah, cool. So that's the best way I can express myself about this, is the Eddie Murphy gifts. New Spawn show confirmed. I call it the Whedon curse. How does Whedon cursed? He directed the 2 most successful superhero films of all time. That's the opposite of a curse. He directed the 2 most successful... No film has made as much money as his 2 Avengers films. That's not a curse. I prefer DC Comics to Marvel, too, actually. What's the question? I'm sorry. If you had been a prominent producer at WB, would you have managed the DCU? How would I have managed it? I mean... let's see. How would I manage it? Simple. I would hire someone like Brad Bird to do a Superman film and let him do it in that wonderful tone that he could create. I would give Batman... I actually think the right idea would have been to stick to solo movies and not try to do Marvel. Where they screwed up is they're rushing to try and capture Marvel's success. They should have had their own success. Nolan had his own success with his own trilogy, you know. They should have said, hey, Batman has his own cinematic universe. Let's create the Batman cinematic universe of Gotham City. And then Suicide Squad ties into that and all that. Then let's do the Superman cinematic universe, where it's about Superman's villains and Kryptons in space. Then let's do Aquaman cinematic universe with the ocean. Then let's do Wonder Woman, you know. They should have treated each film as its own franchise that had its own world and its own universe and all that stuff, which is kind of what they did at Marvel. Marvel has the Iron Man movies and the Tony Stark stuff. Doctor Strange has the cosmic stuff, and then Guardians is more sci-fi goofy. It's kind of like Ice Pirates and Buckaroo Banzai. And Thor Ragnarok's more like that now. But, you know, Thor had Asgard and all that and the Rainbow Bridge. Wonder Woman was the first film to really, you know, what they did with the Amazonians, they gave you a sense of another world. Where I think Krypton... Well, I don't dislike Jor-El and Man of Steel or that, but I wasn't a big fan of the design of Krypton, but it was cool to see Krypton. I actually wish there'd been more of Krypton in that first movie. I would have just made each film a solo franchise into itself, and I would have never even considered Justice League. I would have not said, hey, it's about them getting together. I would have said, you have to make 2 or 3 Wonder Woman movies, you have to make 2 or 3 Superman movies, a couple new Batman films, let's do Suicide Squad was actually a good idea. That was a bad movie, but that was a great idea on paper to do Suicide Squad. Like, really good idea. That's a great way to introduce villains, and it made the money. It was just a great premise. They could have made a good Suicide Squad movie, but you should have done Man of Steel, then a sequel with Superman, and then the next Superman film. Then maybe the 3rd Superman film, Batman and Superman team up. After you have a couple Batman movies. Then you make the Aquaman movie, then you make Wonder Woman, you make a Flash movie. You make all of those, and you make a lot of them. Then you maybe talk about doing some crossovers. And you start slow. Like, yeah, Batman meets Superman. Then they talk about starting a team. Then you have Wonder Woman meet someone like The Flash for one movie for a little while. And then you slowly bring them together. You do crossovers like that. You don't do, like, these big, like, let's throw them all together because you didn't establish the characters. The Avengers was constructed before that and on to be done that way. Like, to have those movies tie in. Man of Steel's such a standalone movie in a lot of ways that you would have been better off to just carry on Superman's story. Instead, his story got taken away from him with Batman v Superman. You know, and a lot of the Man of Steel fans went to go see that movie and were upset, and then a lot of Batman v Superman films are upset now. They're not staying consistent with anything. They're just throwing things out there. Wonder Woman was successful on its own merits as a movie that was a crowd pleaser and people really responded to its premise and what it was doing, and Chris Pine and Gal Gadot and all that stuff. You have to do that. You have to establish that there's a world of these heroes in this universe. You know, and you don't have Superman have a 45-minute fight at the end of Man of Steel. That movie should have all been the small stuff that was the first hour. And then, yeah, then you do a new Batman movie. And you slowly bring those worlds together. You have Batman kind of talk about Superman. You have Superman kind of talk about... But they just rushed it. They rushed it all. It wasn't a bad idea to do their own cinematic universe. They just shouldn't have rushed into it. I don't know why they even did that. They didn't need to. You know, their movies would have made... Batman movie could have made a lot of money on its own. Just like Wonder Woman. I don't know why they didn't make a few films that would make like $800 million, then make your big crossover movie. Because everyone who goes to see this movie, they don't know The Flash at all, outside of the TV show, which is popular. They don't really know, you know, the cartoons, but they don't know this Flash, this Barry Allen. A lot of people don't know Aquaman at all. They just know him from the trailers. He hasn't really been established. It's just that little thumb drive scene in Batman v Superman. You know, Wonder Woman should have been the first one. Wonder Woman should have been the first one in the World War I story. And then you, kind of like Captain America, the first Avenger was right before Avengers, which I think is what they were trying to repeat here with Wonder Woman and Justice League. But you could have started with Wonder Woman and Superman. In Batman v Superman, Superman didn't appear much more powerful than Batman. I know. At least they fixed that with this movie, where they finally show us how strong... This was the first movie for me in years, since Christopher Reeve, where they actually got Superman right. And I give the credit to Joss Whedon. They felt like Whedon moments. That moment where, like, there's two moments in this movie I like so much. That moment where Superman looks at the Flash in the Speed Zone. I love that moment so much. That's such a great moment. And the moment where Superman flies up beside Flash at the end when they go to save the people, and the Flash pushes the truck, and then he looks over and Superman's flying a whole building of people away. Those two scenes are great Superman moments. They really are. And he uses his frost breath finally. Oh my god. Like, he finally felt like Superman. It's like, yes, Superman's supposed to be OP. And that's part of the charm, is that the world is cardboard to him. And he has to not take its... You know, he has to hold back. That's part of Superman's appeal. And Zack was so concerned with making him all human and deep and dealing with the subtext that he forgot the appeal of Superman. Completely. I actually really like Superman in this movie. I thought that was one of the... And when you watch the movie, you see there's a movie in there with bad Superman. Halfway into the movie, when Superman comes back and he's bad, all I'm doing in there is sitting there and going, wow, you know what? If this movie was the Justice League versus Superman, that's your movie. That's your hook, too. Think about the trailers for that movie. The trailers are, hey, we killed him, and now he's back, you know, and he's pissed. It's like if Jesus came back. If he came back, he'd be mad, you know. If Jesus is real, I don't think Jesus, but if Jesus was real and he came back, he'd be like, I'm kicking your guys' butts, you know. You guys are getting punished. That would have been an awesome movie. Like, you have about a half hour, 40 minutes setting up the characters, and then Superman comes back and beats the crap out of everyone, and then it's all about them rushing, trying to get Superman and find Lois Lane and make it all work. And it could have been a really good movie, because that's the best part of the movie, is when Superman fights the Justice League, and it's the only part of the movie that has any creative aspects to it. And it was still... I don't know. The Speed Force stuff the Flash looked horrible, though. His running looks so bad. Ezra Miller can't run. But that moment where he looks at Superman, it's so... I talk about it in my review, and I didn't want to spoil it, but Red Letter Media and other people have already spoiled it. So I guess I'll spoil it for you guys. But there's a moment in the movie. It's so cool. It feels like it's from the animated series or a comic book. And they kind of did this with Quicksilver in Apocalypse and Days of Future Past, but it's how they do it here. Superman's basically fighting off Aquaman, Wonder Woman, and Cyborg. And then the Flash goes into the Speed Zone, and he starts running to, I guess, to try to avoid it or get some sneak attack. And while he's running, everything's in slow motion, like the Quicksilver stuff. And then it cuts to Superman, and Superman turns his eyes and looks right at the Flash. And then turns his head, and then throws the other people off him, and then runs towards the Flash, and goes to hit him, and the Flash can barely avoid his hits. That is the first time in years that someone's captured the strength of Superman. It also changes everything. It's genius visually. It shows you that Superman is working faster than everyone else. It shows you the speed. Like, it shows you the point of view of Superman, because the Flash in the Speed Zone, everything to him, from our point of view, slow, because everything's moving so fast for him. Now that we see Superman kind of lives in that timeline too, that means Wonder Woman, Aquaman are nothing to him. They're just slow to him, and he's living at that faster level too. So when he sees the Flash in the speed zone, it also makes you aware of how Superman kind of sees things too. So it makes Superman more interesting while also making the Flash more interesting. And it's a funny moment. It's so funny. When Superman turns his eyes and looks at the Flash looks so scared. And it's Henry Cavill's best moment of Superman, that moment where he just turns his eyes. It's like, oh crap. And the music's awesome. That was a really cool scene. And I don't know if that was Snyder or Whedon came up with that part. It's a cool part, though, and I liked it a lot. And that was the only moment in the movie I loved. I love that moment. And I want to rewatch that moment on YouTube, but I'm never going to watch the rest of the movie again. But I'll watch that on YouTube. And that moment with Superman flying with the Flash at the end is awesome. Those two moments are really fun, and Superman really works in those moments. But that's really all there was. And I didn't like Autistic Flash. I really thought Wonder Woman was underused in the movie. I thought that Cyborg needed more stuff going on. I think but I did like Superman, which is weird because I don't like Henry Cavill's Superman. And it's not even that his acting was good. It was just the writing of those scenes was actually pretty sweet. All right, but we've been going on almost 2 hours here, and I wanted this to be a shorter episode. I actually wanted to do like 45 minutes, but apparently I can never do 45 minutes unless I have to go somewhere. So I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you for watching this week's Box Office Addict. If you've watched it this far, then you're a box office addict yourself, and I'm not here to help you with your addictions. I'm here to encourage them. I want you to be an addict with me, and it's a pleasure to do this every Sunday with you guys. I love your questions. I love your feedback. If you have anything to say or leave, put it in the comments section, like and subscribe. And leave your predictions for the second weekend of Justice League and what you think is going to happen the next weekend, and we'll see how you guys are close. I'm going to make a guess right now and say second weekend. Let's see, this opened at 96 million. I'm going to make a crazy guess here. I'm going to say second weekend somewhere around 40 million, maybe even less, maybe even 35 million. But I'm going to say 35 to 40 million for the second weekend right now, and we'll see how that goes, because I'm thinking it's going to have a big drop. But you never know. But thank you for tuning in. So the story of the week, Justice League, disappointing opening weekend, but it did okay at the foreign box office. Wonder way overperformed, great opening weekend. Thor still churning along. Daddy's Home 2 and Murder on the Orient Express took pretty big hits, which seemed to be hurting their domestic totals. And The Star, the animated film about the Nativity, had a okay opening weekend, and we're gonna have to see how that holds, because its whole audience might have just went to go see that this weekend being front loaded. But like I said, I appreciate you guys coming in here. I think 47 mils are good. I'd say 45 mils. Like, originally I was thinking like 43 million, 45. I do think 45 is where it's going to end up, but I'm going to go more. I'm going to go crazier than that. I'm going to say 40. I'm going to say lower than that. But I'm probably wrong. I wouldn't be surprised if it was 45 million. But I'm going to go with 40 and just see how that works out. But it's no matter what, it's not going to be a great second weekend. There's just no way to spin it. I get the feeling like Justice League will drop like a rock in the foreign box office. It probably will. I mean, we have yet to see, but I do think it was very front-loaded, while Thor seems to be holding well weekend to weekend. But we're going to have to wait and see. We don't really know. Do you think we'll ever get a Snyder cut of his original? Yes, I do. I think on DVD you'll definitely get this extended cut from Snyder. For sure. I totally think we're going to get that. They've done the extended cuts of everything else. Oh, it's Thanksgiving weekend. That's a good point. What do you think about after Thanksgiving, though? That's the question, right? Like December? Before Christmas? That's where it's really going to show. That's a good point about Thanksgiving. I forgot it was Thanksgiving weekend coming up. But you don't think Coco's going to hurt it? I feel like Coco's going to get all the box office next week. And like, I'm expecting Coco to open like 65, 70 million. I really am. I see that film doing really well. But that's a good point about Thanksgiving. I forgot the holiday. Thanksgiving just snuck up on me. November's gone by so fast for me. Like, months don't even exist anymore. I feel like the year's just one long month. But yeah, I think they need to hold off on Justice League 2, and we'll see where it goes. But anyway, guys, thank you for watching. I love you guys, and it's always fun. And sorry this wasn't one of the longer shows, but it also isn't one of the shorter episodes. So let's look at it that way. A little under 2 hours. We could have done worse. And we stuck to the box office this week, which is kind of crazy. A lot of talk about Justice League, but you have to talk about it. It's one of the biggest stories of the year. It's one of the biggest movies to get released this year. And that opening, I mean, Star Wars is going to be just as interesting to watch unfold. You know, because I still don't know how Star Wars is going to open. But I'll play you guys the outro music from Sharkfoot. This is called Breaking Away. It's on my channel right now if you want to look at it. And go to Sharkfoot_ on YouTube if you want to hear the rest of his music. This is the music I use for my intros on my videos and all that, if you're wondering where it comes from. But yeah, that's it. And may you post Eddie Murphy gifs in peace. May Eddie Murphy gifs be with you.